Hi everyone, so in today's video we're going to look at your key shots around the black area. I'm going to be placing the cue ball in a lot of different areas, at different angles on the blacks, and basically showing you what shots I would choose in certain positions to get the cue ball back into good areas onto the reds. I think when people are doing the break building routines or just even in a frame of snooker, they don't realise that just sometimes when the cue ball's just in a slightly different position, you obviously got to choose a different shot as well, and sometimes people are getting the shot selection wrong, so actually the shot doesn't work out and they just think that the execution's wrong, rather than actually sometimes it's actually the shot that they've chose. So I'm going to try and go through quite a lot, as much as I can today, and demonstrate how I would play them shots. So back to basics really, is I think one of the reasons that this is quite tricky around the black area is when you start playing snooker, obviously you're quite happy to pot a red and get position on the black, and obviously just even pot the blacks pretty good, because it's obviously worth 7 points. So the problem is we'll actually end up getting quite happy around straightish on the black, because then the pot's easier. But then the downfall of that is to play a position for the next shot, it's going to be a lot harder because we don't have any angle to work with. So we've got to start playing with either a lot of spin or quite a bit of power to move the cue ball around. And it all sort of stems from there really. So when I was younger, working on my break building and around the black area, obviously in particular, and then learning from other good players, I quickly realised that we need to be a bit more precise than that and try and leave the cue ball either slightly what we'll call low on the black, so we've got an angle to come up the table, or slightly high on the black, so then we can come off the cushion and then again back into the whatever area of the table that we need to be. And if you can do them two things quite consistently, then that's going to massively help your break building. But what we're going to do today also is, we're not always going to obviously finish in them positions. We're going to look at what I call like the smelly shots, which are angles that we don't like and don't want to be in, how we can actually recover them positions as well. So when you're watching the snooker on the TV and the professionals are playing the pot of red, and I can nearly guarantee nearly every time they'll be in their head, they'll be planning to finish slightly low, or like I say, on a high black. Most of the time it'll probably be a higher black, because that gives you a few more options as well. If they don't do that, that's when you see sometimes the professionals, like I say, pulling a bit of a face because they're not happy, because they've landed too straight. So they don't actually want to be in that position very often. So what I'm going to do then is go from actually a dead straight shot on the black, and then we're going to work just slightly down over to a low black, and then even a bit too low, like I say, where sometimes it's not a great position, and then higher as well, and what we can do from them positions as well, how to get back in a good area for the red. So all I've done is put a red in the middle of the table that basically I'm going to use as a reference of what position I'm going to get the cue ball into. So obviously straight shot on the black. The best option obviously here, which is still not easy, is to try and screw back off the cushion and back out for the red. So I'll try that for you. So obviously nice and low on the cue ball. Bit of spin, come back. So I've judged that obviously quite nicely. And the big thing for me is after I've done that shot, because I've screwed it enough, I can pot the red and get back to the black, so I'd obviously be happy with that. Now the last thing I'm going to talk through a little bit today as well is, obviously most of the people I coach are, amateur players in the clubs, and everyone's different abilities, and there's not, I think as you're working up through the levels, there's also other options in snooker. That's why it's interesting, and that's what part of like the lessons I really like, is if you're playing this shot and you're really struggling to screw back off the cushion, because that's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes, especially in a match position, you can simplify things, and if you can't screw back quite a lot, basically you could even just roll this through or screw back just a little bit and basically play the red maybe into one of the center pockets. That, you know, that might not be the totally correct shot, but it does depend on, like I say, your ability at this time. So I would still work on your screw back shots. I've done other videos on that, of how maybe you can try and create more backspin with a bit of technique and stuff. So check out them other videos. But, you know, sometimes depending on how you feel, you can choose maybe a slightly easier option and just pop the ball and play the red into the centre pocket. But like I say, I'm just going to gradually move the cue ball just down a little bit each shot here. Probably about only half a ball or so, just slightly down, and it obviously changes the shot quite a lot. So in this position, I've got a bit of an angle to work with, which is what I want really. Still not where I would class as perfect. But off this shot, I'm going to just play the cue ball still back this direction, but just direct back to here. So I'm not going to use the cushion because I don't really need to this time. But this kind of shot again is not easy, but I find I'm playing basically just a fraction above a normal screw back shot. Because if I still play just a normal screw here, the softer screw, you can see there, obviously I've got a bit too much spin anyway, but also the line of the cue ball is not very good. It's coming back too low on the red. Your target should always be, what I say sometimes to people is, work up towards the pink line is a good area. Generally, you can work a lot from that area of where to get walls want to pop the red and then get back to the black. Basically what I'm doing is going to hit just slightly higher than me screw, and what that does is it starts to just widen the angle a little bit to come up here. So try that, just slightly higher than the screw. So you can see there, like I say, it's widened the angle, and because I'm hitting a fraction higher, it's not zipped right back to the cushion either. Quite a handy shot there to be able to play. Again, other things I see that can go wrong is sometimes people from that angle is they can play a stun shot, but they want to try and go across that side of the table. But I think because you're playing, if you try and play a stun shot that way, basically you're killing the cue ball. The stun shot is always going to, you know, slightly slow the cue ball down generally. So that shot you have to hit a lot harder to get anything like this kind of result. So I like to say I'm using more spin here still to get the cue ball here, rather than trying to force it across the other side with stun. So like I said, this one's quite interesting. So that would be my normal screw back position here, so nice and low. I'm just going to go up a tiny bit, so you can just see a slight difference there in my tip position. And it starts to widen the cue ball off from the black. So the next shot, we've got, again, the cue ball's just come down a little bit further. And now we're getting probably in the position that I want to be in. So a bit more angle on the black. So we've got a bit more angle to help the cue ball just move. And the other reason that this is a good position to be in, it starts giving us more options. So now basically we can do a soft screw shot, which I'll show you first, but also then we can play a stun shot across to that side now, because the angle's actually just, it's a lot more natural to do either shot. So soft screw. So you see the angle there has brought the cue ball up, and again, I'm always trying to work towards, like I say, roughly the pink line. I always want to be high enough so I'm on the red, and again, I can get back to the black. And then the second shot that I mentioned, like a stun shot. So for me, I'm hitting just a fraction below center, but you know, with these things, you've got to experiment yourself a little bit, because people do sort of cue and hit the cue ball a little bit differently. So you've got to find, you know, the right tip position for you. So for me, just below centre, through there, and exactly the same, but just on the other side. Me pace control, I've got up to that pink line again where I want to be. So really good just to watch out for feedback of where your cluster is, of where you're finishing. So that's another common shot you see quite a lot, and you see I haven't had to play with like any power at all, just the right tip position, and then the right pace obviously, but also the angles really helped with that shot. So we're going to move the cue ball down a little bit more, you can see, and I'm nearly almost parallel with the black. So obviously the angle of the pot's getting a bit wider. So what I try and explain to people is we've got to try and use that properly and let the cue ball start doing a little bit more of what it wants to do, which I know that sounds a bit strange, but as in naturally the cue ball obviously wants to travel sort of across this side of the table. And also the screw shot now would be a lot more difficult. It might not work because of that angle. Sometimes you would find you would actually screw it and possibly even hit the red. So again, what I said earlier about people can choose the wrong shot. So they might be here and choose a screw shot and it doesn't quite work, and they just think that the execution was wrong. But to me, the shot selection is actually wrong. So that's the main reason. So, because we're a little bit lower on the black, obviously the cue ball is going to travel away from the black that little bit easier. So from the last stun shot I did, I'm going to hit maybe just half a tip lower. Again, this is just my own little measurements from practice, and obviously a little bit softer as well, because I know it's going to naturally move quicker. So tiny bit lower, definitely a bit softer. I could feel that straight away. And again, cue balls come up pretty close to the pink line, so I'd obviously be happy with that, whether it's if I'm doing a lineup or if I'm even playing a frame of snooker. So the screw shot would be obviously down here, just to stun it across to that side though. I'm just going to raise my bridge a little bit, so I feel like I'm just below centre, and the cue ball, just with the right pace, goes across there again to the pink line. Right, this one starts to smell a bit. So we've gone lower again, we're down below, parallel on the black, and obviously this is where the pot's getting harder. But obviously again, naturally, the cue ball just wants to start travelling away from the red in this position and start heading up the table. So you know, quite a hard shot. There is a way of recovering this a little bit, which I'm going to obviously show you here. But what you've got to start accept is I'm going to really struggle maybe to keep the cue ball around that area that I've been doing so far. So I'm going to accept that my cue ball is probably going to travel on a little bit further maybe than the pink line here. I'm going to try my best to hold it the best I can. And again, this comes down to just practice, a lot of repetition of where to hit the cue ball and how the shot feels. So a little bit of a trickier pot. So again, a sort of little rule you could call it on these kind of shots is the lower the cue ball is, basically the lower we need to go with tip to just create that little bit of spin that we need. But again, softer than even the last shot. So I've hit that, to be honest with you, I think as good as I can. Black's went in obviously nice and slow. I've got that little bit of bite on the cue ball. The spin's reacted, so it came up the table rather than going towards the cushion or even further up the table. But you could see almost what I said before I played the shot. I knew because of practice and thousands of hours and repetition that the angle is just went a few inches past that pink line. But that's fine, you know. We've got to, in this position, I sort of say take your medicine. You've got to accept what you've got and just try and, you know, find the right little recovery shot. So, you know, give all these a try, and these is where it's starting to get, like I say, a bit of a smelly shot. Right, so again, I'm just moving the cue ball down. This will probably be the lowest one I do. Yeah, obviously the cue ball can be lower than this, but to me, from even this position and then lower again, you're in the same kind of position of, you know, the cue ball's a bit too low here to really stop the cue ball. So, you know, sometimes again, depending on your level, if you're not very confident in potting the black, you can play safe. You know, there's options in snooker again, but maybe in practice on your own, I would advise just trying to practice even just potting these blacks. So when it's even lower here, I think we're starting to get to a point where we can put a bit of spin on the cue ball, but sometimes it's not going to take obviously much effect because I'm hitting less of the object ball. So you can play with a bit of bottom, but again, your cue ball is going to travel further and further up the table. What you might find is a better option. Let's make the pot a little bit easier and not even put any spin on the cue ball. And again, just accept that this is a bad position to be in. Let's just try and pot the black and give us a shot at the red. So sometimes I would just drop this in, no spin, let the cue ball do its own thing, and I've left myself sort of a mid-range shot. But what I've done there a little bit as well is, by playing that black with no spin, I've made that black potting percentage a little bit higher. So you can see already today I've done whatever it is, 4, 5, 6 angles here, and I'm playing a different shot nearly every time, and I'm explaining the reasons behind why I'm playing them shots. Right, so we've done straight black to low blacks. Now we're going to start working up over. So just off straight, again, not where I want to be. So the problem with this shot again is that the white's starting to go down the table, but difficult, not really enough angle to get back up the table, or it's quite difficult. So sometimes again, you know, you can just take the easier option and play soft screw for the red in the center pocket. That might be a good option for you at the minute, but I'm going to show you what I would do in this position. I'm actually going to try and screw back off this cushion with what we call reverse side, which from this side of the table would be right, and it'll actually bring the cue ball up the table for the red. Some people get a bit confused with this because obviously they think that when the cue ball hits the cushion, it's going left, so they think they put left spin on it, which obviously is understandable because that's what your brain's thinking. But it's reverse; it's coming back over, so it's actually the opposite. So we'll have a look at that. So bottom right, not an easy shot again because we've got to allow for that little bit of side spin. So you can see I've got really a hold of that. The cue ball's come back to where I thought, just lower than straight with the right hand side, and it's really kicked the cue ball up quite a lot, to be fair. But again, that's absolutely fine because from this position I'm high on the red, and this is the thing I've learned off a lot of professionals on the 2 hour when I was watching them in the practice rooms is, you know, that's absolutely fine because we just come off the cushion and we're back on the black. It's a lot easier to recover that than coming off the cushion with no spin and landing low on the red, and then we're going away from all the work and things just get harder and harder. So again, I've just went slightly higher. Again, probably half a ball if that, and we've got to play a different shot. This time, top spin, 2 cushions. So not too bad on that one. Maybe you could have hit it a little bit firmer, but you can see it's a good example of it's not a good angle on the black. So I've had to put a bit of pace into that with a top spin, and it's just doesn't travel as easy as we want. So this is why I was saying at the start, it's what you want to be working on is getting the better angles on the blacks, high and low. So we're slightly higher again. And I'd probably say this is one of the ones that not many people play. If I see someone playing this shot, to be honest with you, I sort of like, sounds a bit funny, but I sort of know they're a good snooker player because it's a stun run through shot and you've got to know obviously how to play it for one. But I think a lot of amateurs play, you know, top spin okay maybe. They've learned how to play stun and a bit of screw. But what I'm trying to show you a bit today as well is that there's obviously a lot of in between them points as well. But this can be a really useful shot. So because of the angle again, it's not perfect, but it's better. It's going to be easier to get the cue ball running up this side of the table than trying to come back this side. I feel like if I come this way, again, I'm obviously stunning the ball more, so I'm hitting it harder. I'm forcing things and I'm missing the blacks and everything's starting to just go wrong. So again, I know I'm repeating myself, but sometimes that's wrong shot selection. So then the execution, probably not going to be there. It's more about choosing the right shot. So stun run through, a little bit higher than obviously a normal stun, and then still quite aggressive through the ball. So again, I'd be happy with that. I've just got high enough so I could pop the red and roll through for the black again. But you can see the angle still isn't great. So I've got to put that bit of pace into the shot just to get the cue ball up anywhere near where I want to be. So like I say, I don't see many people playing that shot. If you can learn to do it, it can really add, you know, some value to your break building. So my normal stun would be about here. So I'm just going to go a little bit higher. You see I'm just raising my bridge hand a little bit. Through that point, it starts going on the other side of the table. So a little bit higher on the black. Now this is again back to the where I would probably want to be if I was on the black. So I had earlier the low black, I said that's where I would want to be if I could. Now on the high black, this is probably where I'd want to be also. If you, just for a bit of reference, I try and just tell people this in lessons as well. If you want to know where the cue ball is, if you can't quite tell from the video here, especially on this one, if you just put the cue ball center between the pink and black, roughly, doesn't, you know, exact, and then you came back to halfway between the middle and the cushion, that is pretty much where I am here. Simple again, the reason that this is better is because the angle's greater, so the position's easier, and also I've got more options in what I can do. So I could just play a higher shot here and roll it through off the cushion, and it's going to come up nicely for the red. So you can see I've hit that a lot softer, and guess what? I'm on the pink line again. So that's just the angle doing the work, just higher, and it's happened basically there without any power, force, not really any spin. I've just hit a bit, you know, basically above center there, and let the cue ball take its natural course. And that's, I think, the beauty of that kind of shot. Not again. So the other option I've got on this shot is to obviously come back this side of the table as well. So I think it's worth practicing both. Also, so we've got an option of 2 shots, obviously in some frames of snooker, there's going to be other balls in the way, so we've got to be able to play maybe both sides of the table. So, bit of stun, not too low. Off the cushion, back up for the red. Happy days. Right. Starting to get a bit smelly again. As in the not where I want to be. Potting angles getting difficult. So it can be a bit quite tricky to control the cue ball as well. So again, the natural angle for this, if I didn't put any spin on the shot, it would probably come off the cushion and come up very close to hitting the red, which obviously we don't want. So my mind thinks, well, to go across that side of the table, I'd have to put left on, which on this shot, it's quite hard to do that. Again, there's going to be times where you need to play that shot in a frame of snooker. So you can practice it, but more of what I would say like as a go-to shot would be more naturally to come back this side of the table, because I'm used to that's a more comfortable shot, and playing with maybe a little bit of help inside, which I've spoke about in other videos, that's why this feels a bit more comfortable. So it's a little bit of stun, tracer right on this one, but again I'm hitting a little bit softer because the angle's doing the work for us. So I've just slightly overhit that one. Again, because the angle's a bit wider, so it's just naturally it's ran on a little bit. I've just hit it a little bit too hard as well, obviously. But, you know, again, to be honest with you, I much prefer that than underhitting. I can still pot that and get back on the black, so not too bad. So last shot I'm just going to cover on this, and you can see how much variation we've had. You know, I've obviously for these today as well, I've got my hand on the table for all of these, so I know it can change slightly when it comes further back to the cushion or slightly closer in, but it's giving you a really good idea of your shot selection. So pretty high on the black, again not a great position, but the angle again is going to help us. Now, like I said before, cue ball naturally is going to want to stay a little bit this side of the table, so we're just going to use that. This kind of shot, again, just briefly, what I see a lot in the clubs is, and you can do it this way, but I think it's harder actually doing it, is people play with stun to try and get the cue ball where we want. So they go a little bit lower. And the cue ball starts doing that. Alright? So you can see I've missed the black. It's a tricky shot. But also, I'm playing with stun backspin. So as soon as the white has left the black, it's coming back further towards the cushion here. So it can only go one way. And most people, again, I've said this a few times in this video, just think that they've executed it badly. But to me, it's the wrong shot. It's just hard to get that timing to do that with the stun or screw, whatever your sort of shot is, very hard to do. And again, this is a shot I've learned off other good players. So all we're going to do instead is, this is actually a time where I believe playing with a little bit of side spin is an easier way of playing the shot, again, with practice. So the way I would play it would be sent out with the tracer right for the cue ball just to come back up to where it is now. So you can see there, it's nice and soft. Little tracer right, so the cue ball, the difference is really as well, like I said before, there the cue balls hit the cushion, just its natural position, and then the sides actually just brought it up here. So it's actually more like the sides took actually less effect really than the stun shot would. And again, with the practice and getting the pace right, you can see I've come up nicely for the red. Tip is a little bit right. So hopefully that's going to help you out with a lot of your decision making and shot selection around the blacks. I've tried to go through quite a lot of different angles there. Is obviously what's going to be, you know, a lot of the shots you're going to come against on blacks. So like I say, some of them you might do quite straightforward, but probably some of them are going to take a little bit of practice, especially when you're playing with maybe a bit more power and spin. So hope you enjoyed that. Again, these stuff takes practice, but give it a go. As usual, hope you found this helpful. Leave us a comment below if there's anything you want us to do in future that you feel like maybe I haven't done much of yet. Make sure you like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. That really helps us to keep going and making these videos for you.